Let me offer a setting. It is the 4th century wilderness of Egypt, a community of monks. They lived under the leadership of Saint Pachomius. They shared everything: bread, work, shelter, prayer. Life was simple, but order was vital. Each man was expected to contribute, whether through farming, weaving, or cooking. In the book titled The Sayings of the Desert Fathers, a story is told of one such of these monks. It writes, the author writes, "It was said of Abba John the dwarf that one day," I don't know that name is allowable anymore, that one day he said to his elder brother, "I should like to be free of all care like the angels." I'm not sure the angels have no care, but "who do not work, but ceaselessly offer worship to God." So he took off his cloak and went away into the desert. And after a week he came back to his brother, and when he knocked on the door, he heard his brother say, before he opened it, "Who are you?" He said, "I am John, your brother." But he replied, "John has become an angel, and henceforth he is no longer among men." Then the other begged him, saying, "It is I." However, his brother did not let him in, but left him there in distress until morning. Then, opening the door, he said to him, and he's still there, go some other place anyway, "You are a man, and you must once again work in order to eat." Then John made a prostration before him, saying, "Forgive me." He waited until morning. I don't think any of us would do that. That seems a bit harsh, yet arguably this monk did not leave him in distress for the purpose of humiliating him. Or out of spite of some kind. Rather, he desired to teach him a lesson. Apparently a lesson that his words had yet to teach. The community needed each of its parts to take care of their roles. This story sounds harsh to our modern sensibilities. The monk wasn't punishing him. He was simultaneously teaching this errant brother and preserving the necessary expectations of the community. He understood that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to step back and potentially avoid. Let absence and distress become the teacher when words and presence no longer work. That's the kind of love we're talking about today. It's not so much my purpose statement, but if you needed a purpose statement for today, the surprising love of avoidance. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to graciously remove your presence from another while motivated by and hoping for restoration. This is atypical in our culture and in the church. We're good at withdrawing from people. We're not good at doing it for the right reasons or doing it graciously. We come to one of the most practical sections in Paul's second epistle to the Thessalonians. He's already addressed some of the theological concerns. He starts in chapter 1 and he addresses this theological concern of them thinking that return of Christ had already happened, so he addresses what has to happen before that. So the coming of the rebellious one and this rebellious period of time has to come. Those have not yet come, therefore Christ has not yet come. So he's just like, hang on there, guys. And it seems as if, and we'll talk about this momentarily, but it seems as if their wrong theology about the coming of Christ had resulted in an improper view of work. Therefore, if Jesus has come, I don't know what the point of really working hard is. Or if Jesus is about to come, I don't really know what the point of working hard is. And so they have an improper work ethic because of an improper theology. Some of them had become idle, is the word that we find in many of our versions. And so Paul confronts this problem in chapter 3, starting in verse 6. And the way I want to unfold this is to just address the problem up front. What is the problem that they're actually having? What is the solution that they offer, both to the disorderly, who's the problem, and to the church of how to deal with the disorderly? So there's this two-pronged solution to the disorderly and to the church. But there's also this two-prong application, and we're going to only address the application to the disorderly this morning, and then next week I'm on vacation, so I won't be preaching next week. Brian's preaching next week, right? Okay. He's like, I don't remember. No, yes, he is. We will be gone, but the following week we'll come back, and we're going to do the application for the church, and really is church discipline. What is church discipline, and how should it be understood and practiced? So let's first wrestle with the problem. Now, you can see in our modern versions, if you read more than one, you're going to find that all of the ones that I looked at have a different word when we look at verse 6. So if we read in the ESV, verse 6, we command you, brothers, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you keep away from any brother who is walking in idleness. That's the problem. These brothers who are walking in idleness. That word idleness is the challenge here. Exactly what is it he's referring to? The New American Standard says, who leads an unruly life. The Net version, who lives an undisciplined life, who lives an idle life, who walks irresponsibly, who is idle and disruptive, who walks disorderly. Every version has a couple of them are close, but all of them have a different word for that. And what exactly is this speaking of? And probably the best term to stick with the original meaning in 6 is the concept of disorder. Idleness is the way that the disorder worked itself out. But the problem was there were disorderly brothers in their church. They were irresponsible. They were behaving irresponsible. So initially it's like there's disorder in your church. Well, what kind of disorder? So what the ESV has done is it's kind of translated the word by describing what the disorder was. The disorder was within the context of work ethic. Okay, so there was some disorder in the church, and it revolved around a work ethic. Now, it doesn't seem to be that they were necessarily lazy. They were idle, and that's a little bit different. Let's try to tease the nuance that just a little bit here. So the problem is there's disorder. It's in the area of work, and he uses this concept later, be busy, don't be busybodies, which really is probably the best translation of that. I believe it's in verse 11, because it's a play on words purposefully in the Greek. And he's saying, you're active, you're just not actively doing the right stuff. You're not in your business, and you're in everyone else's business. So get to work, stop being busybodies. So it's not so much that they were lazy. They were doing stuff, they just weren't doing the right things, and the things that they were doing were not helpful. So they were disorderly in the area of a work ethic, and they were working, but they were working and focused on the wrong things. And this problem is complicated by the fact that they seem to expect the church to provide for them. So it seems as if possibly this could probably manifest in a couple ways, and I don't know that there obviously was a very specific context this was working itself out in the church, but it seems like Paul is a little bit broad so that the application can be broader for us. It's possible that these people were doing ministry of some kind, or at least what they perceive to be ministry, and they're helping everybody, like telling them how to live, how to parent, how to do their walks. This is what you should do. Let me just help you. Let me come over to your home and let me just sit with you, and I've noticed some things with your wife. Let's address those things this morning, right? Your kid acted like this in front of me. I know you're struggling, you're doing your best, I'm sure. Let me help you. right? That's kind of the vibe that we get, that these people, they think we're doing this stuff, we're helping people. And by the way, since I came over and basically cleaned up your home for you, it seems appropriate that you pay me. Right? That seems to be, so there's this expectation, I'm doing this thing, I'm being a busybody in your life, and I expect, like other people are getting paid to be in ministry. And all of a sudden, there was this burden in two ways on the church, right? One is that these people are there. Just their presence is a burden to the church, it seems. But also, then the church is kind of being forced to care for them with provision and finances or food or whatever it might be to keep them going. This seems to be the context of what's going on here. That's the problem. It could be that there were people that just were unwilling to work. So there's two ways to take this. It's either people who were doing ministry type of stuff, expecting the church to kind of pay them, or it was people like, Jesus has already come, or Jesus is about to come. What are you doing today? I'd come over and hang out with you. So it's either kind of ministry-minded people or just the average person who's just like, I don't really want to do anything. There's no point because we're going to be gone here pretty soon anyway. And because they didn't do anything, they needed help to get by and eat. And the church is feeling this burden. So potentially it was a compilation of those couple of things. It seems to be probably something along those lines. That is the problem. Now what's the solution? Well, let's start with the disorderly. First, we see in verses 7 through 10, Paul really, in the largest section of this paragraph, he's basically like, I showed you how to do this. I showed you how to walk. So we know that in 1 Thessalonians, he'd already talked to them about this. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 10, let me read that for you. For that indeed is what you are doing to all the brothers throughout Macedonia. But we urge you, brothers, to do this more and more, and to aspire to, and this is going to sound very similar to 2 Thessalonians, aspire to live quietly and mind your own affairs, and to work with your hands, as we instructed you, so that you may walk properly before outsiders and be dependent on no one. That's in 1 Thessalonians. In 2 Thessalonians, let's look at verse 7 through 10. Reading verse 7, starting in verse 7, for you yourselves know how you ought to imitate us. So Paul's basically saying, look at what we did when we were living with you. You know how to do this. We were not idle when we were with you, nor did we eat anyone's bread without paying for it, but with toil and labor we worked night and day, that we might not be a burden to any of you. It was not because we do not have the right, but to give you in ourselves an example to imitate. So Paul's saying, we could have been completely supported by you, but we didn't do that because we wanted to give you an example that you clearly needed. Verse 10, for even when we were with you, we would give you this command, if anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. For we hear that some among you walk in idleness, not busy at work, but busy bodies. So the first solution to the problem for the disorderly is look at what Paul did and reflect that. Paul worked in a way to provide for himself so that he was not a burden to the church. And he purposely did that so that these people could see what that was like. So regardless of the context of why these people were idle, not working and providing for themselves, look at Paul. Second, the second solution for the disorderly or for the idle is work quietly and earn your living. Verse 12. Now such persons we command and encourage in the Lord Jesus Christ to do their work quietly and earn their own living. So simply put, get your nose out of everyone else's business, do your own work, and provide for yourself and your family. That's the solution for the disorderly. This is not complicated text, is it? Your busybodies in everyone's life, get out of everyone's life, and do your work and provide for yourself so that you're not a burden on all the people around you. This is not complicated. That is the solution to the disorderly. What about the church? This is a little bit a little bit more challenging, I think, for us to wrestle through. First, the solution to the church starts with distance yourself from the person. That's interesting. You see this in verse 6 and in verse 14. Paul encourages the church to distance themselves from the disorderly. In verse 6, he writes, "Keep away from any brother who is walking in idleness." Again, in verse 14, the beginning of verse 14, "Take note of that person," it seems a little stronger, at least in our English, "and have nothing to do with him." Paul commands the other believers around this disorderly brother or sister to keep their distance or to keep away from them, to stand aloof, to avoid those who are disorderly. But it is important to make the distinction that this is a corrective, not punitive. This is not a punishment, this is a correction. Paul clearly states the proper motivation for distancing. He writes that he may be ashamed. Does that rub you wrong, any of you? Like, the purpose of this is to shame them. I think and we may dwell on this a little bit in 2 weeks. They lived in a shame culture, and shame was used as a useful tool to help with proper behavior. Does that immediately carry over to our culture? That is not the same. We don't respond to shame the same way. So we're gonna probably address that more in 2 weeks, because I think that for us to properly apply this, we need to think through that. But it's important that we step back and realize this was not a punishment. We're not mad at you, and we're not punishing you. We're correcting. That was what Paul's indicating the church should do. These believers, consider the context of the Thessalonian believers. They've already isolated themselves from the culture at large. They were in a vulnerable position within the culture. The church was likely the primary context of their relationships. So when those within the church kept away from one of their own, that level of shame was compounded. And there was great incentive to conduct oneself appropriately, and it was intended as a means of redemption, not destruction. So avoid one another. That's the solution given to the church. We'll address this more later in 2 weeks. Second, warn as a brother. We are to warn a disorderly brother. Sadly, we are good at distancing ourselves from people. Aren't we? Like, I can just unfriend, and I can go to the next aisle at Walmart when I see you in one. I basically do that every time I'm in Walmart. I'm joking, just like once a week. We just avoid their texts, we avoid their calls. Right? We're good at distancing ourselves. We're really good at applying the first part of this command. Might I go so far and be so dramatic as to say we are wretched at doing the second one. Actually verbalizing graciously the warning to a disorderly brother. We're great at pulling away from them. We're horrible at actually telling them why we're pulling away from them. We do these passive-aggressive comments and then just avoid them. That is not gracious, godly, or appropriate. Warn them as a brother. It is only kind and gracious of us to then come to that brother and at some point sit with them and explain to them why we are putting some distance between them. And third, in this solution for the church, so you're supposed to distance yourself, but I'm going to verbalize that reason. I'm going to warn you as a brother, someone that I care for. And we're going to have to wrestle with, in this context of church discipline, you're warning as a brother. In all the other contexts, you acknowledge as an unbeliever. And that seems different. We'll have to wrestle with that in a couple weeks. So we distance ourselves, but we verbalize why we're warning as a brother. And then he gives this very practical third aspect of the solution for the church. Don't grow weary. Very naturally, we grow cynical when we extend ourselves to people in a caring context. So I think you have to stick with the context of what is he talking about when we don't grow weary. In this context, these people, the church, had been caring for people who had been very presumptuous upon them. And it's very easy in that context to, once you take the step of distancing yourself, what you do, instead of distancing yourself from the person that is a problem, you just distance yourself from people. Like, I'm just tired of people. I'm just tired of caring for anybody. I'm done caring about anybody. That can be our cynical disposition often when we've cared for people and it's burned us. I'm done. And Paul's like, don't grow weary in well-doing. Don't grow weary because you've cared for all of these other people, and this one person over here needs to be let go. Doesn't mean all of these people should. Don't allow yourself to become cynical about caring for all people because some people abuse it. It's easy to do. It's easy to do. You've all done it. Right? Are you with me this morning? Like, are you still trying to wrestle with what I'm saying? Sometimes we just give up on people altogether. Don't do that. Don't grow weary in caring for people. I'm preaching that one to myself deeply. A lot of conviction this week. So, the problem is that there are these disorderly people in the context of a work ethic. Specifically, they're busy bodies, but not busy taking care of their own stuff. So, stop jitting in everyone else's life and take care of your own stuff. Do your work, take care of your family, take care of yourself. Stop making everyone else take care of you, right? And the solution to that is do your work and provide for your family and be quiet. I love how he says that. Just stop telling everyone what they need to be doing. Work quietly. Provide for your families, and those of you who are sitting here like I talk all the time, please understand, this is not like just talking. It's like getting in everyone's business talking, right? Maybe that distinction is helpful. Some of you that talk a lot were looking at me just now, and I could tell the concern on your face. Just make that distinction. That's the solution. The church, then, distance yourself, verbalize why you're distancing yourself, and don't grow weary about caring for people just because you've been burned. Those are the solutions offered in the text, right? Now, let's look at a two-pronged application. Let's start with the disorderly. This term, disorderly, idle, busy bodies, specifically the term busy bodies, has, in this context, seems to be that someone had been imposing themselves on everyone's life and verbalizing what they need to do, and it's like, get out of their life, right? Let me step a little bit broader from that concept to another nuance for the Greek word that's translated busybodies. It can carry the nuance of this, being preoccupied with trifling matters. Taking more pains than enough about a thing, wasting one's labor on it. It's busy doing things that don't need to be done, or it's busy doing things to a degree beyond what they need to be done. That's what the word can also mean. Now, I don't think that's primarily its intent in this text, but honestly, I was trying to think through our church, and I was like, man, I just don't think people being busybodies in everyone's life is necessarily a primary issue for us. I mean, all of us can be that way at times. I don't think it's a pressing issue. I don't think we have an issue of people depending on the church to provide their needs inappropriately. I think sometimes we all go through different points and we need help, but I don't see that being really a problem. What I do see being a problem, and I think this is very present within our church, is that we struggle with, in essence, priority management. Kind of time management. It's the things that we do are fine, but we spend way too much time on the things that we probably should spend less time on. Think of hobbies. The appropriate amount of time in a certain hobby. Does a hobby you have take away from time with family? time with your spouse? Are you consumed with certain things that they're okay in and of themselves, but they consume you too much? I'll give an example. Lately, connected with all of my diet issues and stuff, I've been biking. I've talked to Linda lately about this. Like, I wake up thinking, what bike route have I not gone on? And it's driven me kind of crazy lately because I'm like, I used to wake up thinking, I'm going to go have my devotions. I'm not trying to be super spiritual. Genuinely, that's what I was like. I'd wake up and be like, I'm going to go get my coffee and have my devotions, and I'm working through this book or whatever. And now I wake up and I'm like, I haven't gone on that road yet. Like, do you see how easy we can get consumed with things that don't matter? And then all of a sudden, all of my conversations with Linda are about X, Y, and Z, and not the things that they could be, not things that are encouraging to her, but they're the things that are consuming me. Are they bad things? Not necessarily, but they're consuming me, and this is all she hears about. So I'll just use myself as a bad example, okay? That's happening with me. Well, how about you? Don't share anything, but think through that. Like, we all have that going on, right? There's certain, maybe tasks at work, you should take an hour and you take 4. Maybe there's hobbies that you should spend 2 hours on a week and you spend 20. And all of a sudden, and instead of the church having to support you financially because you're not working, what happens is your family, something is taken from your people. Their time, attention, care, something is consumed from the people around you because you're inordinately consumed with something that is not necessarily bad, but it's out of balance in life. And I think that's probably more an appropriate application for us. Let's try to let's look at our lives and the things that are consuming us and try to prioritize those things in our life in their proper place. And that's hard to do. It's hard to do. It takes a lot of concerted effort and thought. But I would offer that for you to consider this morning by means of application. The application for the church really is church discipline. This is one of the primary passages in the New Testament where the New Testament authors address church discipline. And as I've already said, this is a unique passage because this is the only one where it says, treat them as a brother. The other ones say, treat them as an unbeliever. Very different. Matthew 18. You go through this process, view them as an unbeliever. Couple others, Galatians, 1 Corinthians, treat them as an unbeliever. Don't have anything, don't even eat with them, treat them as an unbeliever. Why is this one different? We're not going to address that today. Teasing that for you guys, 2 weeks after Brian's amazing message next Sunday, the following week is going to be on church discipline. Super fun topic for us. We love this stuff. I'd also like to address the reality that we do not live in a shame-based culture and what are the implications of that. So we're going to look at that in a couple weeks as further application of this particular message. But as we come to a close this morning, let me draw your attention to an image that you will all probably connect with quickly. Think of an old shepherd's tool called a crook. Probably seen a picture of it. A lot of shepherds, Moses seems to always have this thing, kind of this curve on a long stick. This is not just for walking. A crook was for correction. When a sheep began to wander towards danger, maybe towards a cliff, towards some brambles, the shepherd would reach out and wrap the crook around the sheep's neck or leg and pull it back. This is a corrective. Now, to the sheep, it may feel harsh. It might hurt. But it's not punishment. It's rescue. The shepherd doesn't just leave the sheep to its own way because he's cruel. He intervenes because he loves it too much to let it be lost. And that's how Christ loves his people. He doesn't abandon us when we go astray. Sometimes his care comes through the strong arm of the church, through church discipline, not to shame us, but to bring us back. And the hope is this: there's always a way back through Christ. The goal of warning the disorderly is not exile, it's restoration. Therefore, to the disorderly, Christ extends his love to you through the gracious confrontation of other believers. Do you believe that when you, all of us at times, maybe not in the specific context of work, but at some time, all of us are the disorderly? When a loving brother or sister comes and they are the crook of Christ in your life, drawing you back to proper behavior, do you see it that way? As God's loving, shepherding care in your life, that you have people that care enough about you to not simply just walk away from you, but to engage you because they love you and potentially sacrifice their comfort and your friendship as they reach out to you and try to draw you back to Christ. So when we're the disorderly, see this work as God's love extended to us, bringing us back to where we need to be. Receive this as redemptive work. And to the church, when we fail to lovingly confront, we choose to refuse a primary means of Christ's redemptive work in his people. I think this is a problem in every church I've ever been in and ever heard about. We don't like, and probably if you like confrontation, you're not good at it. That's probably true. But we don't like confronting because it feels unkind. It feels ungracious. And often it is, because we wait till we're totally worked up, and then it becomes this emotional, stop doing that! Well, maybe we should have done it before we got to that point, right? So we struggle confronting in love, graciously being the crook. But imagine if in the illustration of the shepherd and the crook, we're the crook and Christ is extending. I had this morning, I was thinking of this, and it's just, I had this Dora the Explorer type cartoon going on in my mind where we're the crook and we're like talking to Jesus, like, no, and he's like trying to crook the sheep, and we're just like, and like going all over, like nothing, anything but helping Christ be the tool of his care for his sheep. And we're like, no, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. Like the backpack that talks back in Dora the Explorer. I'm sorry, some of you are not connecting with this unless you had kids in the early 2000s probably. So I just feel like that's what we can be at times. We're this animate crook. Like, I don't want to do the thing you're using. I don't want to be that tool in someone's life. And we're like, Church, we have been called by Christ to love each other even when it's uncomfortable, which means at times, like, you have to come alongside and be the instrument God has chosen to use us as, to help someone see their behavior as what it is. Of course, we have to acknowledge the mote in our own eye before we deal with the speck in someone else's. Of course, we have to speak the truth in love, have our speech seasoned with grace. Of course, all of those things have to be true. So that's why we do it so cautiously, but we should be willing to extend God's grace to others by confronting them because it matters. Like, their holiness is more important than them liking us or the discomfort of that conversation, right? We know it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. So I'm going to probably be a little dramatic here. Are you so selfish that you're like, I don't want to help you. I prefer my comfort, so I will not talk to you about any problems in your life. That's what you're doing. right? Or you're like, spiritual, I want to be humble. No, you're just being selfish. Let God use you graciously to help others. And it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be awkward. It's going to come out weird, and they may not receive it well. Probably every sheep didn't like it when they get pulled back from a cliff. Will love motivate you to care for one another that way? It should. And I'm not standing up here as like, man, I do this really well, and we all need to work on this. This is really hard to do. So I don't know whether you're the disorderly today that needs to get back in line, or whether we're the church that needs to start implementing some of these things, probably a little of both. I extend that to you this morning, knowing that this work is not us sitting in judgment on others, but it is Christ loving his church and caring for them. And we thank him for that. Lord, thank you for this uncomfortable directive from Paul. Help it settle in our minds and allow us to think through how this manifests in our church broadly, in us individually. In Jesus' name, amen.